Hello, welcome everybody. Today we're going to do a lecture on the nursery business or the nursery industry, nursery business in California, uh, growing plants, right? So, what is that like? What does that industry look like? California is the largest producer in agriculture in the United States, and not just food crops, they're also the largest producer of nursery crops. Think landscape plants, things like that, house plants. So, non edibles. Edibles and non-edibles. So we produce tons of plants in our state, and the business is quite large. There's a lot of nurseries going on and operating in the state of California, and there's still lots of opportunities for more and for continued growth in that sector. So let's talk about the different types of growers and nurseries in California. So we're going to start off with the breeders. So I call them the plant creators. These are people that are breeding plants. These are people that are developing new plants through various ways that are asexual, breeding being sexual, but there are different ways of getting plants to change asexually through mutation. Anyhow, these growers are the people developing new plants, new varieties of plants. And they're an important group because this is where we get a lot of our innovation, and this is where we get a lot of, like I say, plant breeding for harsh climates, for example, uh, plants that do better in specific areas or have lower water usage, many different things. There's plant breeders breeding just new colors of flowers for the cut flower industry, or new types of landscaping plants for the landscaping industry. Anyhow, these growers and the producers, they're investing their time in creating new plant varieties. So what they're doing is very specific. They may be spending many years and lots of money just to get to a specific color or a specific trait. Once they've achieved that um, specific trait that they're looking for, their work is pretty much done. They get to patent that plant, and then they're going to send that plant's genetic material, which is basically a piece of that plant or a whole plant itself, to another grower. So kind of think of it like a designer, right? The designer who designs a shirt. He may make one or two or a few of them, but he's not going to be making all of those shirts. Somebody else is going to be making them, right? Same way with the plants. You've developed a specific original plant, and then you'll patent that, name it, and then you will sell that on to somebody who wants to grow it. That's kind of the idea here. So whether that's a new type of vegetable, a new color flower, a different a different color foliage on a landscape tree, whatever it is, the originators of those plants, they get to name them, and they make their money by patenting, never get that right, the names and the varieties. Now, not every grower, breeder, plant developer patents their plants. Sometimes they just let it go, and those plants are free on the market for anybody to grow. And in general, patenting a plant is kind of a controversial thing, and the layperson can propagate them without any real impunity. It's basically nurseries that are making lots of money that can get in big trouble for selling patented plants that they have not participated in that patent. For like the home gardener, if you propagate, take a cutting on a plant, a patented plant, no one's really going to know and really care unless you're going to be producing that plant for sale. So those breeders and the original producers, they do have a lot of money invested, because imagine you could be breeding for this trait forever, for years. And in the meantime, you are paying bills, you have greenhouse, you have water, you have labor, you have everything, time. So they are heavily invested. So it is good to honor that, especially if it's done appropriately in the right way, is to honor the producer. Anyhow, these originators of these new plant varieties are a really cool group. So we need more of that. Right? Like right now, for example, There's the Zeiger family, which is a family of fruit tree breeders and producers in, I think it's Modesto, California. And they are the leading developers of new types of stone fruits, peaches, plums, apples, apricots, pluots, stuff like that. And there's likewise large breeders in California of roses and large breeders of vegetables. So that are trying to breed new varieties that are hardier to California, or new colors of roses that are would be really popular for weddings, for example. So that's a really interesting part of the nursery business, are these tinkers that are breeding and developing new plants. It's big business outside the United States too, but it's also big business within the United States. You get a new cool house plant that's got variegated leaves, right? You name it, and then you can start producing it. Also in this group of producers, the producing type nurseries are the seed producers. Now they're a little different. So let's think mostly veggies and stuff like that. So these are crops that are not really produced asexually. They're crops that are produced by seed, and most of those are edible crops. So are edible, quote unquote, veggie crops. Most of them are all produced by seed. So a grower, you grow acres and acres of corn, you need corn seed or lettuce seed or whatever seed. So seed producers, basically their job is to produce seed. They're not selling you corn to eat, they're selling you corn seeds, because most industrial farmers, or most farmers, they're harvesting most of their stuff and they're not saving their own seeds. And just you in your garden, you want to grow some veggies, you're going to need to buy some seeds if you want to do that. And then eventually you can collect your own seeds, but you need to procure the seeds somehow. So seed producers are also at the very beginning of this nursery business chain, and they're extremely important. The need for seed is real, whether it's native plant seeds, edible plant seeds. We tend to always, since COVID also, there's just been almost a chronic shortage of seeds, or just a big demand for seeds in general. So, like during last week's conference, the Mojave Desert Native Plant Conference, put on by the Bureau of Land Management, the whole uh, impetus for this, all these people getting together, is the need to collect and have native plant seeds, or just adapted seeds to dry areas, to any type of areas. Um, Again, the main reason is seeds grown locally are better adapted to those local conditions. So if you're in California, it's best to get brandywine tomato seeds grown and harvested in California, versus those that might have been grown and harvested in, let's say, Maine, because they're going to be more adapted to the local conditions. So it's very important that we do develop more local seed producers, and we're seeing that. Um, we need more of it, because most of the larger seed producers, like if you were to go buy your veggie seed, they're pretty, large companies, and they're not, a lot of them are based locally, or they source their seeds from all over the place, and you don't really know where those seeds came from. But anyhow, big demand. There's plenty of niches in heirloom vegetables. Like I said, California natives, huge demand for seeds in California natives, for forestry, restoration, and just regular horticulture. And again, the need for vegetables seeds is always in demand. We're always going to eat. And other things like cover crop seeds, where a farmer will plant other plants that are companion plants that help their plants grow. This is especially true in an orchard environment. And that seed is sometimes hard to find. So seed producers and the plant breeders, I kind of put as the originators, the first part of the industry, because they're creating the new plants, whether it's physically a new plant that's never been seen before, or the seeds that will make baby plants, which will be new plants, or the cuttings, for example, of the mama of a new plant. So the next step from that, we have the wholesale, or the growers. Now, these are the people that are actually growing plants. They're focused on multiplying, getting as many of these plants as possible, looking as nice as possible, to ship out. So a grower, for example, I develop a blue rose, Carlos's blue rose. I patent it. I find a grower that I like, and I say, here you go. Will you grow my blue rose? And you get to sell it, right? And as long as I get paid my royalty, um, which is a certain percentage of, let's say, I don't know, 60 cents for every one you sell, I get 60 cents. But I'm not producing the rose. You are. I give you my blue rose. I give you one of my mamas, or I give you a piece of my mama, the genetic material. You're not growing that blue rose from seed, because if you do, you will lose that genetic variety. It might turn into something else. So you're going to clone uh, my plant. I'm either going to give you a plant and you're going to make clones out of it, or I'm going to give you pieces of my plants that you will then turn into clones. And their job is to mass produce these plants, make as many of them as possible, make them look as nice as possible, as fast as possible, and get them distributed. That's a wholesaler, wholesale grower. Lots of those in California because of the good weather. A lot of growers are located here because it's easier to grow plants, cheaper, and then they get shipped out all over the place to be used in landscaping or retail nurseries, whatever. So the growers, they are the true horticulturist. So if you're a real horticulturist and you are into growing plants, you'll feel it very much at home in the wholesale nursery, where it's all plants all the time, and you're growing them. You're keeping diseases down. You're really watching the disease and the pests there. You are watching the plants and make sure that they're growing exactly in the conditions they need to. So it's a very horticulturally demanding job, and it's actually quite nice, especially if you don't like dealing with a lot of people. You will be dealing with people still, but it's different than a retail nursery, for example. It's a lot more growing, but you still have to sell and market. You're going to be selling to other people ordering on the phone. I need 10 of these, 20 of those, right, for their shops or for their landscapes. So growers, uh, again, are meeting the demand of the retail and landscape installation type people, right? So typically a wholesaler, they might sell to the public, but they're not going to have like multiple locations, for example, retail centers, or there won't be their necessary market. They will be selling to various other people. So my blue rose that I developed, I give to a grower. The grower grows as many as he can. Now they're distributing them all over the place, all over the United States, to all these nurseries to sell as many as they can. So the grower's job is to make those plants look nice, make it at a good price, and really keep down the bugs and the pests. So they have a lot to worry about, the growers. Then the final end users would be the retailers. So I order these blue roses from my nursery. I'm at Home Depot, for example. I order 100 of them to sell to the public. Now, the difference between the retailer and the wholesaler, besides, retailing and wholesaling, is that the retailer does not want that plant there very long. The faster that plant leaves the retail situation, or the cheaper it's going to be, because the longer you have a plant in a nursery, the more cost it's occurring. Someone's got to water it. Someone's got to take care of it. Electricity, lighting, heating, cooling, whatever. So it's incurring a cost as this plant is in your custody. So a retailer wants to get it out of there, sell it, right? Sell that stock. Plus, it's a living thing, so you can't really store it really well. So retail can be tricky because the plants have to look good. They have to maintain the plants at a really nice level without, them starting to look bad. So the retailer usually will and typically marks up the plant 50 to 100%. So if it was $2, we sell it for at least $4. Maybe be a little bit more, but generally that's what we're doing as the retailer. We're doing just a simple markup. When I was in the nursery business, we just marked up everything double what it was. Like I said, so if I bought it for $2, we sell it for $4. And some things we would have to mark up more because it would take more labor or more time to deal with, like bonsai, for example. So bonsai, we'd mark up more than just double it because a lot more fussy. But the retailer, they have to worry more about the experience, what it's like for the customer to come in and see their plants, they're going to be offering a lot more information to their customers about how to grow the plants. Usually, when you're in wholesale, you're dealing with a more professional type people, landscape designers, gardeners, other nurseries, and they pretty much kind of know what they want, and they kind of know how much things cost because that's their job is to buy it. But the public, not so much. So you spend a lot of time educating on the public. It's also hard sometimes in a nursery because let's say you need to get one more plant, and sometimes you can't. The grower's like, I don't have any more. I sold them all, and we won't have more till next year because that plant has to grow, right? And then your customer is like mad, and but you're like, I can't do anything because they don't exist. The plants are just they have to grow, they have to be produced. That's one problem with the nursery business is these are living things. You can't store them. You can't, they die. You can accidentally fall off a truck or something and they break. So it's important in a retail nursery that you're very working really well to manage your stock. You don't want overstock. You don't want too much things selling because you're going to lose money. But at the same time, you want to be able to order what you need. Also, a lot of your growers have a minimum order. So you come to me, you're Carlos, I need one blue rose. And I'll be like, that's I can't get you one blue rose because I have to order from from that nursery who makes them. I have to order a minimum of 10. So if it's something that I know I can sell, I can order that. But if it's like you only need one, unfortunately you're the only customer, it's not going to be in my best business interest to do that transaction because what if I only sell that one and then I have the other 7 to 8 plants to deal with? So that also makes it harder too. So special ordering is tricky in a nursery. Can be done. Usually the retail nursery though, that's what they do. They do special orders. They order for the general public. So one of their job is to go out and find these plants all over the place. Also, the landscape industry will go. So let's say I'm a landscaper. I will go buy my plants at a wholesale place and then sell them retail to my landscape customer. So in a sense, I become the retail nursery, even though I'm a landscape designer. And that gives you more control over the plants too, because you can get everything from one place and you get better pricing instead of having the customer go buy the plants, right? From all these different places or from one place. It's typically better if the landscaper does it for them because they get it from the same source typically, and there may be incentives like quantity discounts or if a return policy, for example, something dies, you get 6 months to return it. You get a new one. And that's typically what you get from a grower, not so much from retailers. Retailers are going to have a hard time guaranteeing their plants because plants are notoriously, you do anything wrong and it dies. So a lot of retail nurseries have been, especially recently, decreased how much guarantees on their products just because of the difficulty in honoring those guarantees. Like I said, when your trees die, I can't get more for a year. So what happens to your guarantee? Basically, I have to give you your money back because I can't give you a tree. It doesn't exist yet. So it's a little trickier. Now, the retailers, they also, because they're dealing directly with the public, they have to keep up an image. You have to be clean, clear, and signed, and paths nice and open, and nice, clean bathrooms. Because if you don't have that stuff in your retail business, it's not going to be good. Nobody wants to go shopping at a place with dirty, nasty bathrooms, muddy, hard to walk through paths. That's just not what a retail experience should be. The wholesalers, they don't care because they're wholesale. The people going in there, I'm already like when I go plants, I'm walking through the mud and I'm looking for what I'm looking for. I don't need anybody's help really to help me. Right. So if I go to a wholesale nursery, I'm not going to ask an employee, can you tell me about these plants? Can you show me your shrubs and blah, blah, blah. They're not really going to do that. They're going to be like, they're over there. And then you go look because you're the professional. You look through what they have. You find what you need. The retailer will be the opposite. They will, or they should help you. Like, what is this plant? Do you have any suggestions for a shrub? And the retailer, their job is to meet that demand. So if you are needing more type questions answered, you will find that better at a retail nursery, or you'd have to make an appointment with a professional at a grower. You just can't like walk into a wholesale nursery and expect that type of help that you would get at a retail nursery. And that's the difference. You do pay for that privilege. That's why you pay more at the retail, because you're getting one-on-one help and stuff like that. It's just the business, right? Everybody knows that. Wholesale to retail. um, so those are the different layers, and then you have the actual farmers, people growing the crops. Remember, that's different than growing the plants. So if you're a tomato farmer and you sell tomatoes, actual tomato fruit, that's a whole different system than if you're a tomato grower who are selling baby tomato plants, right? Those are two, same plant, but two very different things, right? It's more complicated to sell the tomato plants than it is to sell the tomato fruit. There's much more involved, and the cost is actually a bit higher. So remember that. What part of the system are we in? Are we in the seed production? Are we in the breeding part of the plant? Are we in the bulking, the growing as many of them as possible? Or are we in the selling of the plant? And those different things kind of model the different parts of the industry. There's the only other thing I can think of are specialty growers, contract growers, which, like in my line of business, would be growers that are working in restoration projects. So we have like a silver sage nursery up in the high desert, which they specialize in growing plants for the Mitsubishi cement mine and the other cement mines in the Mojave Desert. Very niche market. They're only growing for a certain amount of mines, certain plants that these mines need for restoration. They grow it, the mines take it. And it's a contract situation. So the mine's like, I need this. I can't get it anywhere else. Can you grow it? And they say, yes, we grow it. We provide it to you. That's a unique situation. That's a great situation. And those nurseries do exist. A lot of the times they're dealing with governmental agencies, local, state, city, county agencies. A lot of times they're doing restoration type projects. So it's mostly uh, is concentrated on native plants, this type of production. So we do have the contract growers also out there. And then lastly are research growers, which kind of go back to the beginning. Those are the growers like people in the schools, like the big universities that are doing research and help the plant breeders and the plant produce the seed growers either find or understand how the new plants are produced. So it's a very dynamic industry in California. Like I said, if someone was going to try to start a business, one of the businesses I would recommend would be a seed nursery, a seed producing nursery, starting off with native seeds because they're the most in demand, native California seeds. Then a seed producer specializing in food seeds that are, um, I would say, that would be crops that are chosen to grow best in California. We're talking California businesses. Okay. Then or another good idea would be a nursery that specializes in edible plants or fruit trees. Not just let's go order it from other growers, but a nursery that's doing it themselves. Because we already have Dave Wilson, who dominates all of the fruit tree production. But in a way, we need more of that. We need different sources, not just a few. Dave Wilson's a great nursery, but we need many different growers because there's just too much stuff out there that needs to be produced, and the price point's still pretty high. So food production nurseries, and then lastly, nurseries, just a general nursery that the high desert still lacks in my opinion, a really good comprehensive plant nursery that has a little bit of everything and professionals that can help you find what plants you want. So definitely do that. A person that knows their plants, like in Plant ID, knows their names, scientific names, and has what the picture in the head, what they are very valuable to a nursery because you're dealing in scientific names. You're not ordering plants with their common names. And you have to understand, okay, in your brain, someone asks you, hey, how big does a Pittosporum cream de mint go? You kind of have to have that picture of the Pittosporum cream de mint in your head, kind of knowing the size and color of it, so you can kind of rapidly give suggestions to customers and sell the plants. That's one of the things I like to do is sell plants. I worked in the nursery business for a decade, and it was fun in the retail section. You get to, and I basically would sell plants I like. I'm a plant nerd, so I grow and and deal with a lot of plants, different types of plants. And part of the reason why I like to do that is I could now tell people about my experience with those plants and whether or not they're a good suggestion for what they're looking for. And people like that because if they know, like, okay, you're being kind of honest, you're not just trying to sell them whatever, you're literally trying to sell them what will grow and what will work. And you educate them how it's not, how these plants are beneficial, not just because they're pretty or drought tolerant, but maybe they have ecological values, maybe they have human use values, food, medicine, whatever, that are interesting. So we try to the coolest thing about being in the industry is just liking plants and sharing that knowledge. And usually people are very receptive. Yes, you're going to get problems like any business, but it's a relatively nice business, I think. Some of the hard parts, like I said, is like any farming, agriculture is always operating on fairly razor thin margins because there's a lot of upfront cost in infrastructure, greenhouses, tables, water, irrigation, whatever, right? And also finding the labor. It's not just watering and weeding. People think it's this boring, unskilled labor. It's actually a lot of fairly high skilled labor involved in some of these plants. And then also think about nursery production, greenhouse, excuse me, production in greenhouses. Greenhouses themselves can be incredibly sophisticated with all sorts of software and climate control sensors and whatnot. So we have a lot of different places. And then we have to talk about some of the other interesting ones. So we have the cannabis industry, which is, I didn't put it in the normal nursery group because they are not a normal nursery group. The cannabis producers have a lot of have their own laws and regulations, their own system of doing business, and their plants aren't entering into the normal nursery trade. Right, you don't go into a normal nursery yet and find cannabis plants or cannabis seeds. You have to either go to a specialized grower that's licensed to sell that, or you have to do it a different way, do it yourself or whatnot. So the cannabis growing and the cannabis industry, nursery industry, I don't keep it in like the regular industry. I usually put it with food production because it's much more like how a tomato grower would does business. There's subsidies from the government to grow these crops. They're growing on a large scale. The crops are for have an end use that's a human use, either a food already prepared or a product. Think of the cannabis industry. You're either selling the actual flower or a product made from it that has a somewhat medical thing to it, so that you're going to have higher grades of standards, and it's a different system legality. It's like growing and selling wine or liquor in the state of California. It's not the same as you're selling orange juice. You're just going to have different regulations. Cannabis industry has took off and then come down, and I think it's kind of leveled off. In the beginning, everybody was like going crazy. Everybody wanted to do it. Then there was too much, and people were just the amount of illegal growth was crazy. So that business is it's evolving and changing. It's still lucrative. It's very competitive, but it is still there and still thriving. That business also needs every component, right? Growers, producers, and also retailers. One of the cool things if you're in that business is the burgeoning breeding and all the work done for genetics with cannabis, right? That's kind of a really cool thing. And also the production of other things besides just THC and the other cannabinoids and the difference that all the different types of products, medicinal products you can get out of the plants. So that's a good example of a niche, a very interesting niche market. So that was my quick overview of the nursery businesses in the state of California, which are pretty much the same as everywhere else, except here we have the most of them and they're pretty supercharged. All right, I'll see you guys later on in class. Thanks.